So gleaning, collecting food, mostly fresh fruits and vegetables, by volunteer gleaners. This is one type of gleaning. The volunteer gleaners from what is left in the field after harvest, and donating these to food banks or pantries that service the needy. Yeah. So let me show you some of the photos in southern tier of New York of volunteer crews gleaning product. In this case, it's potatoes for the food bank of the southern tier in Elmira, New York, in this farm, in the Homer C. Thompson Research Farm. You can see that apples also are a very popular item to glean in New York. These are examples of gleaned apples in Boston, Massachusetts, in this case. This is just to show you, to be honest with you, the first time I learned about gleaning and about going to a food bank warehouse, I thought that I was going to go to a small shed, with some shelves there, and then I go and see this. Yeah, this is amazing. It's quite a sophisticated system of procuring and distributing to centers. So I show this because this shows that this is a food bank of a warehouse that is serving a region that is relatively small, and I was amazed. I was just surprised to see the level of sophistication, and that prompted the interest on thinking, okay, how can we in academia can do research that can help improve operations, maybe. Yeah? These are food bank volunteers sorting donated food, here in this case. So I think gleaning is important because there are people that are mentioning in marketing in general this issue of cause marketing. Cause marketing is just tying your business to good causes, like donating to cancer, donating to the food needy, donating to the hungry, and I think gleaning can be a good example of you see big companies today, Coke, Procter & Gamble, they use cost marketing in their strategies, and I think avoiding losses in the field and feeding the need may fit very well for some big companies to advertise themselves as doing something good for the community, okay? So because this is what people in America think, 88% of consumers say it's acceptable for companies to involve in causes in their marketing, some things that they want to change. 85% of consumers have a more positive image of a product or a company when it supports a cause they care about. 90% of consumers want companies to tell them what causes they are supporting. I'm supporting cancer research or hungry. And we see here, Americans believe that companies should prioritize support for issues that affect the quality of life. Half of them in local communities, 37% in the US, and 20% and 17% in the world. Now, the leading issues, if you see, here is hunger. About 75% of consumers know that hunger is a big issue that deserves attention, or malnutrition. There are others such as equal rights, crime, homelessness, environment, access to clean water, etc. But you see that hunger or malnutrition is important as well. So I think one of the importance of gleaning is to link that to a market incentive in marketing, to advertise the company as doing something good for humanity. So the benefits, of gleaning are several. One is to improve the nutritional status of food insecure individuals by offering more fruits and vegetables. Because as I mentioned before, we have in the US about 50% of the population, households, were food insecure in 2014. So that's not That's not a small portion of the population. This, and due to lack of access to healthy diets, these households may experience malnutrition, deficiencies in micronutrients that are important in fruits and vegetables, but also are very vulnerable to weight-related health problems such as diabetes and hypertension. So that's an important aspect. The other benefit of gleaning is to reduce food losses. We, according to the USDA and other researchers, 30 to 40% of the total edible food in the US is lost at different stages of the supply chain. And it is estimated that about 7% of the planted acreage is not harvested because of defects in the product. Cosmetic blemishes, mechanical harvesting inaccuracies, lacking of market for the crop, etc. Okay? So we see that gleaning can benefit the people that are in need of better diets, but also reduce food losses. So based on this, in the past 5 years, we have seen a rapid growth of pilot programs focusing on gleaning. So the California Association of Food Banks Farm to Family program, they distributed about 127 million pounds of fresh produce to 41 food banks in the state in 2012 alone. And in other states, we see that gleaning programs are also important, including New York, with 3.6 million pounds of produce distributed in 2010. So when you talk to food banks, to supply managers in food banks, they are telling us the following. Okay, when you have 3 farms donating, it's very easy, because I can coordinate with them the gleaning, when to glean, and I can have my volunteers gleaners to go to the farm and glean or pick up the product. And it's easy, but as these programs grow, it's very difficult to coordinate and to have an efficient operation. Why? Because there is a lot of uncertainty in the timing of the harvest, the volume available for gleaning, because we don't know how much is left, the farmer's willingness to donate, some do not, and that's random, and the availability of our volunteers, the gleaning pool of volunteers that we have. So there is a lot of uncertainty on this. So I have to make a comment here. In our research, there are 2 types of gleaning. One is gleaning in which the farmer calls, or the farmer calls, and then the manager of the food bank organizes the volunteers. They go with the crew and they pick up a harvest and collect the product, and they come back. Other type of gleaning is that the packing houses keep crews of workers for 2 or 3 more days, pick up that product. The food banks may pay for the cost of keeping the crew 2 extra days, and then the volunteers go and just pick up the product. In our case, we are focusing, because this is what we have in the food bank of the southern tier in New York, and also in the Boston area. The food bank, they have the first type, in which they work with volunteers that go and actually pick up the product. So what do we do? What we do is we develop a model. I'm not going to talk very much about this, but basically we develop a model that can be used by food banks. It's a software which is in development that can be used by food banks to schedule better the gleaning operations. Yeah. So we use this model, which the characteristic of the model is that there is a lot of uncertainty. And we apply the model to the gleaning program of the food bank of the southern tier in New York State, and to understand, does this work? Does this make sense? So one interesting question is that point in the food bank of the southern tier is that you have the food bank, you have about 1,000 farms in a 6-county region, ranging from large to small farms, and you have 76 places of delivery of products, including schools, nursing homes, pantries, even some rural areas. So they have a supply chain that is local but is complicated. So this is the setting. So let me explain to you. So you have farmers produce different types of products. In New York we have a very diversified agriculture in fruits and vegetables, and here you have the food bank. And the blue people are the gleaners that are willing to go and volunteer with you. Here are the donating farms, and here is the food bank. What happens is that during the harvest season, a farm calls the food bank with a gleaning opportunity. So the food bank, what they do is start to schedule the day in the calendar to program a gleaning trip, which takes about 3 to 5 hours in general, depending on the volume, the distance, etc. The food bank announces this through their email list of volunteers, and then what happens is that these volunteers decide whether to attend a scheduled glean trip, and they come and they go to the farm and they do the gleaning. Then after this, the volunteers, this group of volunteers, glean the product, in this case apples, bring it to the warehouse for distribution, and then some of these gleaners go to a kind of rest area. After you volunteer, you are not likely to volunteer in the near future. Yeah? So we know that these people go to a state that they are not going to volunteer the next gleaning opportunity. Okay? So this happens. See, these people move to this rest area, so these kind of brown people are people that are not available for gleaning for the next call for a period of time. And then eventually these people start going back and become active gleaners again. Okay? So it's like that, the operation. In a flow, you have a call. The manager decides, is there a slot available within a window of time? Because the farmer calls and says, okay, I have apples and you can glean in the next seven days. So the manager decides, yes, I do it, no, I can't. So we cannot schedule a gleaning trip, but if yes, then they schedule, then there is a trip, there is a gleaning, then there is a volume glean, then these volunteer gleaners come and then go to rest. There is a big gleaner pool, and then the decision variable basically is what's the best, it's a simple question, is if you're a manager, do you have a rule to say I schedule calls every day, twice a week, once a week, only Mondays, Saturdays, etc. So we were trying to understand what will be the best schedule for the food bank to maximize the volume gleaned. Okay? So we did a field study in collaboration with two entities. One is the food bank of the southern tier. We use data from the U.S. Census of Agriculture to understand what are the foods available in the region of the food bank of the southern tier. And we we also learn a lot from the Boston Area Gleaners Incorporated. That's what they do to understand what's the behavior of the volunteer gleaners. Yeah? So we take the volunteer gleaner characteristics and the characteristics of the farm in this region, I will show it to you, to do a simulation of the diagram that I just showed you, the operation, and see how it works. This is our focus area. It's 6 counties in southern New York. Here is the food bank in Elmira, New York. And that's what we do. We do it for a period. And the next question is how many products to glean. So one issue of complexity is that in this case, the food bank has a gleaning program for 5 products: cabbage, onion, potato, corn, and apples. And the lines are intended to represent the harvest window, when the product starts to be available in this region. Yeah, so we see that cabbage, and this is time from June through November, mid-November is the gleaning program, and that's, so for example, in September you will have all products available, maybe for gleaning opportunities, but at the beginning you only will have cabbage, then you will have onion, potato, corn, etc. So we do all this, and I will explain this graph first to show you what the results indicate. So the idea of the model that we do is, given this schedule, given this harvest season, and given the availability of gleaning volunteers, which in this case it was about 150 gleaners, volunteers, what should be the schedule? Once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, 4 times a week, of every day of the week, that will maximize my volume glean, okay? So these are, I'm going to jump to the results. And here is the horizontal axis, we see the number 1 is if you schedule only once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, or every day of the week. And here you see the service levels. How do we call service levels? Is the calls that I am able to actually schedule for gleaning relative to the calls that I receive. So if you have 1, means that every single call that you got from farmers, you were able to service. So you had enough gleaners and you could schedule a trip. If this is 0, is that your service is very bad. You couldn't schedule any trip. So what we see here is that probably 1 time per week is too low. Your service levels for all the products will be very low, ranging from only 1 out of 10 in the case of potatoes to only 1 out of 2 for cabbage and onions. But as you increase the number of days in your scheduling, you start increasing the service levels, but at a decreasing rate. So probably you have huge gains in service when you move from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 times a week. But after 4 times a week, the gains start to become smaller. Scheduling more maybe is not going to mean that you are going to be able to glean more, okay? So that's the first result. So it seems like scheduling too few or too many is not a good idea in terms of metrics of interest. Is the ratio between the volume that you actually glean relative to the volume that farmers are telling you that you can glean in your calls. Yeah? So notice that in this case, in our model, following, so there are some gains in the volume. You can vote for most of the crops by scheduling 4 days a week of gleaning. You can basically glean 20% take advantage of, you will collect 20% of the total volume available for gleaning, which is still very slow. It is very high in cabbage, because in cabbage, remember that is the longest harvest period. You for some reason that I will explain later, when you rely on volunteers, it is the crop that gets the higher service in terms of volume arrived as a proportion of total volume available for gleaning. Call versus service level is the expected volume glean, and I'm going to focus just in this total. These are pounds, and these are the schedules possibilities, 1 day a week to 7 days per week. And we see that actually this is the appointment capacity, slot per week. So we see that we can increase the volume glean if we start increasing the appointment, the slots per week from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. But if we go beyond 5, actually the volume glean starts to go down. And what's happening here is that if you schedule too many calls, you go to too many trees, but you will not have enough gleaners to glean enough volume in the farms. Okay? Here is increasing the call slotting capacity, yeah, can decrease the volume. That is, more gleaning trips can result in less volume glean, because just if you schedule too many gleaning trips, each gleaning trip will have too few volunteers to get enough volume for that trip to contribute to higher volume glean. We see also that changing the schedule has an effect on the composition of the products that you are actually able to glean. The percentage volume gleaned as a percent of the total volume available in the calls. So we see that and remember here, apple starts in later than cabbage. The next one that enters production is onion, then potato, corn. And we see that, say for example, the more there is a trade-off between products. If you schedule too few trips per week, probably what you will glean the most is apples and then cabbage. You always glean, apples as a percentage of the volume glean. You will tend to take more advantage of gleaning for apples and potato, but very less on cabbage as a percent of the total volume available for gleaning. So there is some trade-off that happens here. The gleaning schedule can be used as a tool to alert product mix. It can be used to increase or decrease the volume of a crop in high or low demand, respectively. So if there is higher demand for apples, they like it more, probably it's better to schedule less trips. But if there is an interest in corn, for example, then maybe it makes more sense to schedule more trips per week. And here we have the appointment capacity, and here we have the eagerness of the gleaners. So for example, the more eager when in the blue, when you have 5 to 7%, is that when you make a call, only 5 to 7% of the volunteers come to glean. On the contrary, the purple one, 20 to 22%, means that when the food bank makes a call, 20% of the gleaners in the gleaner pool will come. So notice that this purple line indicates that when your volunteers are more eager to come gleaning, you are actually gleaning less. And that's kind of contradictory. And that's happening in reality for the bank. When you have volunteers that are very eager, you glean less, and you glean less even as you increase the number of slotting, the slots per week, the trips per week. That's what we call the eagerness paradox. The expected total volume gleaned for various gleaner eagerness levels means that the more, when you have eagerness among volunteers, you tend to glean less. And that happens because they tend to go to most of the calls. And then you get too many gleaners at the beginning of the season, and at the end you don't have enough volunteers to glean product at the end. So
the ability of volunteers to how many pounds or kilos they can pick up in the 3 hours, or is it they don't work as hard when they're more eager?
No. The amount of volume, the amount of product gleaned, the productivity of the gleaner is constant. It's different for each product, and we have it in the model. When we talk about gleaner, eagerness is the willingness to go. That if I make a call, what proportion of the gleaners in the gleaner pool will come to the trip. So when you have too many eager gleaners, you will have too many going to certain trips, especially at the beginning. So in summary, what we are seeing is that a gleaning operation is not a simple operation, because you have uncertainty in terms of the volume of product that is going to be offered by farmers, and in your ability to attract gleaners to glean. Yeah? So, but there is agreement that gleaning can be an effective way to provide healthy foods to the food insecure individuals that served by food banks. And in this case, in our case, this pilot project that we are doing, we are recommending to the bank of the southern tier that they should schedule 3 to 4 gleaning trips per week. At the beginning, they were willing to schedule every day, but in terms of optimizing the volume and servicing the calls for them, it was better just to stick to 3 to 4 times per week to maximize the volume glean. So, and the operational insights are there is a calls versus volume service level trade-off. Increasing the appointment capacity can be indeed detrimental because you have less volunteers for each trip. Operating a schedule alter the product mix that you will get, and that's something that is important, especially when we think about offering a mix of fruits and vegetables to the food insecure. What I mentioned about the gleaner eagerness paradox, when you have gleaners that are too excited about this, you may get less volume. And one of the insights is that there has to be a policy for capping the numbers of gleaners per trip for efficient gleaner capacity allocation. And that's it. Thank you.
Early on in the presentation, the development of some software, and then we have all of the data that you presented today. Is the ultimate objective to use the software and the data to help educate and increase the amount of gleaning that takes place to help serve the...
Yeah, the objective is we are developing a software that can be used by food banks. The software has to be different for different food banks. It has different products, different types of farms, and different types of volunteers. But the point is that by having this system, we want to allow the food bank to really establish the best gleaning scheduling, but also to track metrics on volume gleaned that can be used to advertise. That's an important component on this. How much food waste did we avoid, and how much produce we distributed to recipients of food aid, to food pantries, nursing homes, etc. So that's
excellent.
Not to hog the questions. Slide number 3, I think you were showing cabbage because of its long harvesting period, was
Yeah.
the most efficient up there. And then on the next slide,
Yeah.
cabbage had collapsed to down at 5% of something.
Yeah.
What's going on there that cabbage went from like the easy, long
Yeah.
row, people just pick it up versus potatoes which you dig?
Yes.
What was happening?
In this particular area, we have many cabbage farms that are smaller, and there are fewer potato farms that are bigger. And then that's important because you get a call from big farms or for very small farms. So in terms of the amount of calls that the bank serviced for cabbage was smaller, even though we have many more farms. So
Let's show our appreciation for Professor
Okay,
Gómez.
thank you.
Wonderful presentation. Thank you.
thank you.